I was never a Gloria Steinem. I've never been a women's libber. I've laughed. My daughter said, but you broke more glass ceilings. And I said, yeah, but I was too busy breaking the glass ceilings my way. And I didn't march with signs or militancy. It was not my thing. I just worked. My mother referred to me, God bless her soul, as a happy little moron, because my brother was brilliant. I had paralytic polio at age 11, and that made me get interested in studying dance much more seriously. I had done la-la dancing when I was kind of 2 up to 11, but I was entered into a very tough school of classical ballet to get my muscles back intact after 8 months of paralysis on one side. My pediatrician was a lady. That was extremely unusual in retrospect. And she was just wonderful. And she simply told me every time I saw her that when you grow up, you will be a doctor. Okay, fine, I'll be a doctor. So by the time I was in kindergarten, I was saying I'd be a doctor. But by the time I was 10, I got very excited about particle physics and quantum mechanics. And I started reading in those areas. And this was before my paralytic polio. And I decided that I wanted to go into science as well as medicine. And then the polio sent me back to ballet. I became a member of the National Ballet Company when I was 14 and a half. I danced semi-professionally for 3.5 years, and I helped earn my way through college by teaching dance, very lucrative compared to other kinds of jobs. And I got very interested in politics, policy, international relations, and debating. And starting at age 15, I was invited to be on a weekly television show run by the late Ted Granick called Youth Wants to Know. So my week comprised of dancing 6 days a week, dancing in the National Ballet Company, doing a preparation late Saturday or early Sunday for Youth Wants to Know, doing a television show, and then getting in science fairs. And I entered the first science fair in the 6th grade. I did it right through the National Science Fair in the 12th grade. I competed for Westinghouse when I was 16. I was in the top 40. I went to Washington, where I already lived, and I was interviewed, amongst other people, by the brilliant physicist I. Rabi, and also by the man who was to become Rockefeller's president, Detlef Blanc. And they were my 2 major interrogators. I became an awardee of the top 5, getting a nice scholarship to go on to college. You know, I made myself a pact that if I ever felt angry or bitter, I should leave. Because you can't be creative when you're sitting and mulling and feeling bitter and angry. Now, you should ask me what it was like when I arrived at Rockefeller in 1964. Well, it was wonderful. There was a paucity of women, to put it mildly. I was told by Professor Dole, whom I liked very much at the interviews, but I was told to put on a white dress, and I was told to go downstairs in Founders to the ladies' dining room, where everyone had on white dresses and only women were. And I said no and no. And we went to the Lower East Side and met the Chinese addicts. We went up to the prisons, met people in prison. We met people on the streets of New York. We learned different things from different groups. I think what I learned as a physician, and I think Dole learned it too, is these were actually good people. And what I know now from my own research and research of colleagues elsewhere, it's a condition that's primarily genetic, with 60% or more of the relative risk of developing an addiction once self-exposed, depending on multiple gene variants. We didn't know that then. But we did write in our very first paper that heroin addiction was a disease of the brain with behavioral consequences, something that I recite every lecture I give, and not just a criminal behavior or weakness. And during that first, month or 2, we brought a group of heroin addicts who had all left Sing Sing, and all of whom had relapsed within 2 weeks, which was the norm. And we brought them into hospital here, and think about that. This is pristine environment, beautiful gardens, quiet scientists, and a lovely little hospital that was created in early 1900s. And we wanted to bring in active heroin addicts. Oh my goodness. I wanted to understand every little nuance of why they took the drug. What was this craving? What is this drug hunger that we still talk about and can't put a finger on? But it's finally made the diagnostic categorization for psychiatrists. It's craving as part of DSM-5. But you want it, you have a hunger for it. We use the word hunger a lot too. It was really a feeling that I'm not normal without it. And that was important to elucidate. It was not that I can't get high without it. Very important difference. Is I don't feel normal without it. And I could understand wanting to feel normal. I mean, I'd had polio. I'd not been able to move for 6 months, you know. You want to feel normal. So we said, okay, we're dealing with something like an endocrine disorder. So I felt like I was right at home, having been trained in endocrinology. It was like a deficiency. And we now know, my lab has proven, you could develop a relative endorphin deficiency during cycles of heroin addiction, but we didn't know that then. And we need a pharmacotherapy, and I use the words and have for about 25 years now, of replacement treatment. We use that for thyroid, don't we? And we use it for steroids if you've had to have your adrenals or your pituitary removed. Heroin, like every one of the major drugs of abuse, like cocaine, like alcohol, acts in an on-off fashion at its sites of action. We know that heroin's primary site of action is the mu-opioid receptor, but it's an on-off effect, like a jackhammer. On-off, half-life of only 30 minutes for the most active species of heroin, 4 hours for its metabolite morphine. Now, methadone has long-acting properties, and I may have said we had 2 goals for a pharmacotherapeutic agent, long-acting and orally effective. We wanted a steady state, we wanted an oral medication. We decided we would try methadone, but we'd try with low doses and then go up, not down. And we go up slowly to try to develop what we called cross tolerance, or what is cross tolerance, and we called blockade, which would blockade the effects of superimposed heroin. And in a way, I can say the rest is history. The problem in our nation now, fast forward 100 years later, as far as I'm concerned, stigma still prevails, and people still say addict, criminal, deviant. They should be locked up, put on an island. The island should be bombed. I've been told that face to face. I don't ask people to be believers. I simply ask them to look at the data. And when people ask me what I believe, I said, I'm sorry, I'm not a philosopher and I'm not a theologian. So I don't have belief systems. I just have knowledge of what I have done in my research or other people have done. I test the credibility of each. But my creativity, I think, is seeing connectivity and then what's needed to measure something. Those 2 things. The connectivity, and it could be between a human disease and an animal model, or it could be all kinds of things. But then how to measure it to be sure you're right and it's not just a thought or an idea. Reducing to practice used to be a term my father in patent law would talk about all the time, but I think it really was ingrained in me. You have to reduce something to practice, you have to measure it or show it's true. And then you believe it. Feel good, feel bad. Feel good for what you've achieved, feel badly that you can't achieve more. Feel good that you've been able to introduce treatment in many parts of the globe. Feel badly that your own country is going down, not up, in access to treatment. Feel good about the excitement. The number of people that want to be postdocs and pre-docs in the lab. But do I have it in a medical education across the street or any of the 100 med schools in the U.S.? No. Feel good, feel bad.